Don't tread on me. Do not tread on me. Stay away from me. Listen, you white British overlords, stop ruling over us, taking all our resources and taxing us without giving us any representation in your government. Just give us our own country. And you know what? If you don't do that, I'm going to bite you back. I'm going to bite you hard, and it will hurt. Well, folks, that's what the Gadsden flag meant when it was first made. As far as I'm concerned, that's exactly what it means today. So why all the controversy and the questions about what it means? Well, here's an interview I did, and it will explain everything.
So before we get into the meaning of the flag today or any controversy, can you give me some basic history of where the term "don't tread on me" came from?
Sure, you can do a Google search about, the phrase "don't tread on me," and you'll read a lot of stuff about like Ben Franklin and the United States and colonization and so on. Not all the stories or timelines really agree with each other, but I will do my best to explain things as I understand the origins. Basically, during the U.S. War of Independence in the 1770s, also known as the Revolutionary War, the United States was not actually the United States, right? It was basically a mishmash of 13 independent colonies that just really, they had lots of disagreements with each other. They fought a lot about just different issues, and they had just a hard time cooperating with each other in fighting their common enemy, which is the British. England had basically colonized America, and they were known as the American colonies. And all the colonies resented English rule over them to one degree or another, especially given that they were taxed, but they didn't have any say in how, that they were governed. And so that's really where the slogan came from, taxation without representation. You've heard that before. That's the origin of it. And really during the struggle against English rule, an American merchant ship, and this is kind of the beginning of some of the historical events around the flag itself. A merchant ship from the U.S. or from the colonies came from England to Philadelphia with information about a bunch of supply ships that were coming to America from England with supplies for the English military machine. And really the Americans, of course, wanted to capture those ships for themselves to gain an advantage over the English in the war. And so the U.S. government, which at the time it was called the Continental Congress, they came up with a plan. And the plan was basically to give birth to some form of a navy to fight the English. And they did it, but it was nothing fancy. It was really, I think it was 7 ships to start. And they hoped that was just a start, of course. Now, to get soldiers and sailors needed to operate these ships, the government put together 5 companies of Marines, which were soldiers on ships. And as the story goes, a bunch of Marines that enlisted were seen carrying yellow drums with a big coiled rattlesnake painted on them. And that's really where the phrase "don't tread on me" was spotted for the first time. So I guess we don't actually know who decided to color the drums yellow. Maybe some dude, we don't know. But see, now is where it starts to get interesting, because there was a guy named Christopher Gadsden, and he was an American patriot, or rebel, I guess, depending on which side you're on. And he was also a merchant, and yeah, he did own slaves like Benjamin Franklin did, and pretty much everyone else who had money at the time. He was also a soldier and a politician. As if that's not enough, he wasn't just that, but he was also a brigadier general in the Continental Army, and he held lots of other political and military titles. He was actually the guy who came up with the flag itself, and he gave it to the commander-in-chief of the Continental Navy. His name was Commodore Essex Hopkins, and Essex Hopkins used it on the main mast of his own ship as his unique personal standard.
Okay, so what does the flag actually mean?
So really the use of a snake, or a rattlesnake specifically, was no accident. The eastern diamondback rattlesnake and I think the other one's a timber rattlesnake were both pretty common in the American colonies. And in a satirical newspaper article, Benjamin Franklin suggested that the Americas send rattlesnakes to Britain in response to the British sending all their convicts and crooks to the colonies, kind of like they did to Australia, right? Just send the worst people out of their own country to another place where they can't do any harm. So he really liked the idea, Benjamin Franklin did, of having a rattlesnake as the mascot for the American colonies because of the qualities that it represents. Now that sounds weird, but here is a quote from Ben Franklin that explains. "She never begins an attack, nor when once engaged, ever surrenders. She is therefore an emblem of magnanimity and true courage. But their wounds, however small, are decisive and fatal. Conscious of this, she never wounds till she has generously given notice even to her own enemy, and cautioned him against the danger of stepping on her. Was I wrong, sir, in thinking this a strong picture of the temper and conduct of America?" So that's typical Ben Franklin, sarcastic and witty, but very scholarly. Whatever you might think of the symbol, "Don't tread on me," and the flag, there is no doubt, I mean there is no doubt, that its actual origin is 100% pro-revolution and anti-British. Anti-no one else, anti-British. Right? Keep that in mind. It was conceived of and developed in a totally non-racial context during the War of Independence.
So what's the issue now, and why all the controversy?
Well, great question. You know, somewhere around the early 2000s, somehow the Gadsden flag became associated with a small group of extremists in the ranks of like ultra-right-wing conservative groups and libertarian causes, gun rights advocates, and so on. In a word, it was politicized. Actually, in our modern world, it was politicized. It was also political back then, in the 1770s, but really for a whole different issue that we've just been talking about. Then, to add to the confusion, some supporters of these right-wing extreme groups were accused of being racist, which is entirely possible that they were. And they were seen, apparently, flying the Gadsden flag, or maybe they had a t-shirt or something with it. And I can tell you that those flying the flag just meant it to be a stand against government overreach in their lives. But critics of those extreme groups decided to accuse the flag itself of being a symbol of bigotry and hatred. You can imagine, I'm sure, if you're ever accused of being racist and you admit it, well, then you are a horrible, evil racist. If you deny being a racist, then you are labeled a horrible, evil racist. So you really can't win. Basically, it looks like some dudes who are actually probably racist wore a rattlesnake t-shirt, and then the Gadsden flag is now officially racist. That's the gist of the modern meaning of the flag and the controversy surrounding the whole issue.
Does that seem a little unfair toward American patriots who really like the flag as a symbol of historical resilience against oppression?
Well, not only does it seem unfair, but it's kind of the same thing as accusing, let's say a little girl who draws a picture, let's say, of a colored rainbow in her kindergarten art class. And you accuse that little girl of being a pro-gay activist because the symbol of the rainbow has been adopted by the LGBTQ community. We know originally that the rainbow was a biblical symbol of God's promise to never again destroy the earth with a flood. That was just about what everyone in my generation and before me grew up knowing about the rainbow. So I think the lesson here is that we should probably not jump to conclusions about what symbols mean by those who use them before we actually research their original intent and then evaluate the intent of those who currently use that symbol. Really, that's basically the takeaway here. You might find, if you do that, you might find that different people use the same symbol, but for completely different reasons.
Any parting thoughts?
Well, I really appreciate being able to share my thoughts with you guys, and if you appreciate truth with no political correctness filter, but also with some degree of civility and consideration for those who may not share my views, then please do subscribe to Knife Up for more videos about knives, outdoor stuff, reviews, and sometimes, like today, you'll get the odd random topic that relates to something potentially controversial in our culture. There's also a little like or thumbs up button that needs pressing too. All right. Oh, hey, and if you're curious about Don't Tread on Me flags and other stuff like clothes, belt buckles, and a pile of other stuff, just check out some of the links below in the description, and I promise you, you'll be amazed at what you find. And by the way, even if you don't want to buy any of this stuff, that's totally fine. It just, believe it or not, it actually helps me out if you click any of the links below to go to Amazon and just kind of cruise around, see what there is. I really love doing videos like this, and it just helps me to be able to do that on an ongoing basis financially, even if you're not looking to buy anything today. All right? Keep that in mind. Doesn't cost you a penny. Helps me out a little bit. Thanks very much, guys. And until we connect once more, don't tread on me, man. Don't mess with me. Don't tread on me. Do not mess with my rights. Stay away from me. Listen, you white American overlords. Ugh, British.